after QP.
As was discussed prior, the honourable member for Caribou Prince George will have 8 minutes coming to him to complete his discussion after question period, or his presentation after question period, and have another 10 minutes of questions coming to him. Statement by members. Déclaration de député. L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Glengarry Prescott Russell. Mr. Speaker, in recent weeks, flooding on the Ottawa River has affected my constituents in Cumberland, Clarence, Rockland, Alfred, Plantagenet, and Champlain. In spite of the hard times, the community has come together to help their flood-stricken neighbours. We've seen businesses donate money, food, and resources, and neighbours working side by side for hours, filling, moving, and stacking sandbags.
We witnessed the great work of our Canadian Armed Forces, who on short notice were deployed in Cumberland and Clarence Rockland to lend a hand to residents. Mr. Speaker, there is nothing more powerful for affected residents than seeing our men and women in uniform. Now that the water has peaked for a second time and is receding, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank residents, city officials, emergency services, and members of the Canadian Armed Forces who worked together to overcome this flooding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, it took about as long for the good weather to return this year as it took for the Liberals in 2015 to plunge us into debt and ridicule for all to see. This torture is drawing to an end. Conservatives are the only ones who've ever been a credible option capable of governing in an accountable and ethical manner. This summer in Lévis-Lotbinière, I'll have the privilege of sharing and celebrating the values that bring and hold us together with young and old alike on Canada Day and at the Expo Lotbinière site and at performances of our regional cultural theatrical play Comme dans le temps in Saint-Gilles. Mr. Speaker, there's still time to choose initiatives to improve our community, more so than ever with the election coming in the fall. Quebec deserves better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for King Vaughan.
Mr. Speaker, last year Bill S-232, sponsored by the member from York Centre, passed unanimously in this House and designated May as the Canadian Jewish Heritage Month. By enacting this law, Parliament has provided Canada's Jewish community much needed and much deserved recognition. My riding of King Vaughan is home to a vibrant and diverse Jewish community, and like Jews throughout Canada, the Jewish community in my riding has contributed immensely to growing a dynamic, successful, and inclusive society. In this disturbing period of rising anti-Semitism, it is right and just that all of us, whatever our faith, both recognize and celebrate the contributions Jews have made to Canada, but also work to support and defend our Jewish neighbours, friends, and institutions, not only this month, but every month. During Jewish Heritage Month, I want to pay particular attention to the good work undertaken by the Centre for Israel and Jewish Affairs and the Canadian Jewish Political Affairs Committee, both of whom work hard to educate politicians, students, and community leaders on the issues of importance to Israel, Canada, and the Jewish people. Let me conclude by wishing everyone Chodesh Tov.
Honourable member for Vancouver East.
Today, I would like to show parliamentarians what leaderships look like. Under the guidance of Ms. Gina, the grade 6 and 7 students at Hastings School organized an amazing assembly to celebrate Earth Day. This project included a beautiful art piece of the Earth with a handprint of each student delivering their message on how to save the Earth. The students are gripped with the most important issue of their generation: climate catastrophe, species at risk, forced migration. These young, engaged citizens want action and solutions. They want us to, quote, keep fossil fuels in the ground, coal, oil, and gas. Like the students at Hastings, thousands of students took part in the climate strike on May 3rd. Their demands are clear: 65% emissions reductions by 2030, separation of oil and state, a just transition, right to a safe environment, Indigenous rights, conserve biodiversity, protection of vulnerable groups. It's time to put, quote, planet before profit. To stop pollution, we are the solution. In other words, Green New Deal now.
Member for Scarborough Rouge Park.
Mr. Speaker, this May 18th, we mark the 10th anniversary of the genocide in Mulivaikal. Over 70,000 Tamils were killed, 300,000 detained, and countless disappeared. I want to remember and honor those who died, their families, and survivors. Within the designated no-fire zone, the makeshift hospital was repeatedly bombed by the Sri Lankan military. The last remaining medical team became the lifeline for many. They saved thousands of lives working in treacherous conditions and put their own lives at risk, all the while reporting on the atrocities to the world through whomever would listen. They became the face of humanity at a moment when humanity forgot those in the small sliver of land called Mulivaikal. I'm honored to welcome to Parliament Hill today Dr. T. Varadaraja and Mrs. K. Kandasamy, members of the medical team whose courage, valor, and heroism have left their Tamil nation and all of humanity forever in their debt. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Most Canadians, they dream of owning a home, but the Liberals' mortgage rules are keeping many of these individuals out of the market. Owning a home, of course, comes with a sense of pride, a sense of accomplishment, and a sense of joy. It's an honor for Canadians to have a permanent place where they get to build a life. However, more and more young Canadians are finding it very, very difficult and reporting that they're giving up on the dream of home ownership. They're struggling to afford daily necessities, let alone be able to save for a down payment. To make matters worse, the current government has implemented a mortgage stress test that makes it extremely difficult for first-time home buyers to be able to get into the market. Canadians build wealth by owning a home. It's very key. By blocking millennials from this opportunity, the Liberals are actually keeping them from being able to build equity and create a life for themselves, enjoying the stability of a home. Conservatives are committed to ensuring that Canadians in all regions of this country are able to afford a home, to realize their dream. We will continue to implement policies that will serve Canadians well and help regular Canadians get ahead.
Honourable member for Cumberland Colchester.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2006, I was asked for help by the families of two young boys who each had been diagnosed with a brain tumor. Working with the Canadian Alliance of Brain Tumor Organizations, we developed Private Members Motion 235, which called on the government to help develop a national brain tumor registry. Tomorrow, the brand new Brain Tumor Registry of Canada will be launched for the first time to make sure that every brain tumor in Canada is counted and studied. When the motion was passed by this House in 2007, young Brandon Dempsey and his mother Jennifer were in the gallery. Sadly, Brandon passed away in 2012, but I'm very pleased that his mother is back in the gallery today. I want to recognize Matthew McDonald from Truro and Brandon Dempsey of Amherst, two young Canadians who did not survive their brain tumors. Without their courage and without their courageous fight and their determined support of their parents, the Brain Tumor Registry might not have been created. I also want to recognize my assistant, Lauren Byrne, for his tireless efforts and all of the brain tumor community which helped develop the National Brain Tumor Registry. Thank you.
Scarborough Centre.
Mr. Speaker, every year Muslims across the world take part in Ramadan. As we fast from dawn to sunset for the next month, we take the time to reflect on ourselves, our actions, and our values. The month of Ramadan is a time of patience, empathy, and compassion. It's a time when we grow closer to our families, friends, and community. We open our hearts and strive to give back to our community through charity and volunteering. We share these values as Muslims and Canadians who work every day to make our country a better place. In my riding of Scarborough Centre, Ramadan brings people together. Our Multi-Faith Council, which regularly brings community members of different faiths together, will be hosting a multi-faith iftar or the breaking of the fast. I am proud to be part of the Muslim community in Canada, a community that contributes to the diversity that makes Canada strong. I would like to wish everyone observing this month Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak.
The honourable member for Cariboo, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, it's 3.5 years in, and Canadians now realize this Prime Minister's just not as advertised. With his hand on his heart, he promised reconciliation. Instead, he pitted First Nation against First Nation. On softwooding the economy, he said, just trust me. Yet investment in companies continue to flee. There's no savings left for those rainy days, as a bank account has been drained by his sunny ways. He jets off to exotic locations on vacations, offending our neighbors in many foreign nations. He bought Loblaws their fridges and freezers and such, and even though he promised to be there after the fires, aside from photos and selfies, he really hasn't given us much. Our fire-damaged fridges and freezers replacement, we paid. His fake environmental plan, just a carbon tax raid. Let the debate reign, said the Papineau PM. After all, it's about them, not about us. Mr. Speaker, 71 times he has shut down debate, another Liberal promise broken by this debate. All was forgotten after the ballots were cast, but all is not lost. This October, Canadians can ensure it's his last.
Honourable member for Hamilton East, Stony Creek.
Mr. Speaker, the diversity of our great country creates historic events. And for Canadians of Croatian descent, today is such a day. Today, our Governor General will host Her Excellency Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović, President of the Republic of Croatia, at Rideau Hall. This marks the first official state visit of Croatia's head of state since the declaration of its independence in 1991. It is a tribute to the thousands of Croatian immigrants, such as my father and grandparents, who have contributed to the success of Canada at every level, from common labor to arts, science, politics, professions, sports, and perhaps most importantly, great neighbors and citizens. President Grabar-Kitarović has made a remarkable impact on the world scene since her election and currently holds the chair of the Council of Women World Leaders. So many Canadians have received a warm welcome visiting our beautiful homeland we call Lijepa naša domovino, that we can now say to Her Excellency, Dobrodošli u Kanadu. Welcome to Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Brampton West.
Mr. Speaker, Vancouver will soon host Women Deliver 2019 conference, the world's largest gathering on gender equality and the health rights and well-being of women and girls. Women Deliver is more than just a conference, Mr. Speaker. It is a movement to take action and make our voices heard. During the month of May, we're calling on all Canadians to mobilize to advance gender equality in their communities in Canada and around the world. The yellow arrow pointed towards ourselves is a reminder that each of us are allies for change. Mr. Speaker, in May, we call on to drive progress and leave the lasting legacy of a fairer and equal society where Canada continues to be a leader on the international stage, because we know when we empower women and girls, we not only empower their communities or their countries, but we empower the entire world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, on March 31st, one of the Prime Minister's lawyers sent a letter threatening a lawsuit if the Leader of the official opposition didn't withdraw the following statements regarding the PM's involvement in the SNC-Lavalin corruption scandal. That documents and recordings are concrete evidence that prove the PM led a campaign to politically interfere with SNC-Lavalin's criminal prosecution. That the PM personally gave the order, and when the former Attorney General refused to follow them and break the law, she was fired. That the PM looked Canadians in the eye and told them that no one had raised concerns with him. That was false. And that the entire SNC-Lavalin scandal is corruption on top of corruption on top of corruption. Mr. Speaker, the official opposition leader responded saying, if the PM intends to commence a lawsuit, he should proceed immediately. Mr. Speaker, that was more than a month and a half ago. Is the Prime Minister's threatened lawsuit, like the PM, simply not as advertised?
Honourable Member for Kingston and the Islands.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it turns out someone ended up being better than advertised. The number of the day, Mr. Speaker, is 107,000. 107,000 is the number of jobs Canada added in April alone. Undeniable proof from Statistics Canada that our economy is booming. The most jobs added in 1 month since 1976. As stated by one senior economist at TD Bank, this is a solid message that employers have faith in the Canadian economy. In fact, Mr. Speaker, since 2015, Canadians have created over 1 million jobs, smashing growth records and bringing unemployment levels to the lowest this country has seen in generations. So, Mr. Speaker, while Conservatives carry on with drumming up slogans and personal attacks, while systematically voting against every policy that has led to these historic employment levels, on this side of the House, we will remain focused on building a robust economy that drives Canada forward and improves the quality of life for everyone.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
I told you we could produce plastic-like products made from natural agricultural waste fibers that are 100% compostable. I'm proud to say that this exact innovation has been created by two of my constituents from Kingsville. Last week, Mike and Victor Thiessen received the 2019 National Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada Synergy Award for Innovation. They helped create a biomass product created from coffee plants that is 100% compostable. Prism Farms partnered with 3 Ontario companies to develop biodegradable materials which are a substitute for petroleum-based plastics. They use natural fibers and resins found in non-food, agricultural material and waste streams to create these biocomposite materials. One of their materials is now used in single-serve coffee pods by companies like McDonald's and Club Coffee. This innovation will reduce our dependency of single-use plastics and waste that is building up in our landfills and oceans. Canadians like Mike and Victor are working hard to create cutting-edge, enterprising solutions that could truly change our world for the better.
I'm glad the honourable member for Chicoutimi-Lafiore. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government wasn't ready to govern our country. They're spending recklessly and racking up ongoing deficits. Now the Liberals are doing what they've always done best, infighting. They're squabbling amongst themselves, battling the provinces over the carbon tax, and stoking old quarrels with Quebec by refusing to respect provincial jurisdiction. The Liberal government attacked Quebec, sacrificing supply management at the bargaining table. Steel and aluminum tariffs are still in effect. Quebec's forestry industry is suffering as Canada is still grappling with a softwood lumber dispute, and legislative amendments are threatening forestry co-ops. Expect restrictions to protect the woodland caribou. Mismanagement of the fighter jet renewal is now putting Quebec's aerospace industry in jeopardy. Davie Shipyards delivered the Asterix on time and on budget, but is still waiting for other contracts, including for the Obelix. Mr. Speaker, Quebec deserves better. The honourable member for Longueuil-Charlemagne.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday was Mother's Day, and it was the first one without my mom. Leona Laurent Romanato passed away suddenly at the tender age of 67 on November 30th. She was married to my dad for 49 years. Leona, or Leah, she was known to her friends, was a stay-at-home mom who raised me and my 2 brothers. She was the grandmother of 5 grandchildren. She was the caregiver, the cook, the maid, the maker of Halloween costumes and thousands of cups of coffee, the disciplinarian, the doer of homework, the applier of Band-Aids, the one who united us all. Lee was a queen of Christmas and spent weeks decorating the house. She loved spending time with my dad up at camp tending to her flower garden. After my election, my mother would put CPAC on, hoping to catch a glimpse of me speaking in the house. Mom, I know you're watching me from above. Today and every day, I honor you and the lessons you taught me. Happy Mother's Day.
Oral questions. Questions orales. The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Vice Admiral Mark Norman and his defense team have been clear. The Prime Minister and his office tried to interfere in the case against the Vice Admiral, both prior to the charges being laid and during the proceedings. In fact, Marie Heinen said this. She said, "You don't put your finger and try to weigh in on the scales of justice. That is not what should be happening." She was talking about these Liberals. So, Mr. Speaker, just exactly why did the Prime Minister try to weigh in on the scales of justice and interfere in the Vice Admiral's court case?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, nothing could be further from the truth. As we have said a number of times on this side of the House, we have full faith in our institutions in Canada. The charges in question were laid by the prosecution service, by the Director of Public Prosecutions. The process was managed by the Prosecution Service of Canada, and the stay was decided by the Prosecution Service in Canada. The evidence was gathered by the RCMP, Mr. Speaker, and was turned over to the Prosecution Service of Canada. Mr. Speaker, the Director of Public Prosecutions, as well as the prosecutor in this case, have both stated that there was no government interference or contact.
That's right.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we are not questioning the independence of the public prosecutor. We know that the decision to stay the trial was theirs, but As Norman's lawyer said very directly, the decision to stay the charges was made independently despite the attempts of the Liberals to interfere. Not because of, but despite their attempts. So, Mr. Speaker, here we are, 5 days later, still no answers from the Prime Minister. Will he get up today and answer this question, or will he appear before the Defence Committee, start answering some questions on this?
Good question. The Honourable Minister of National Revenue.
Mr. Speaker, the charges against Vice Admiral Norman were stayed, and as the PPSC confirmed, every decision is made independently of government. There was no external influence involved in the decision to lay or stay those charges. All the charges being made by the opposition are absurd. The Honourable Leader of the Government, Leader of the Opposition.
In this case from the beginning. Yes. Vice Admiral Norman's defense counsel said this. She said, no person in this country should walk into a courtroom and feel that they are fighting their elected government or any sort of political interference. She was talking about the Liberal government, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, will the Liberals on the Defense Committee block the truth from coming out, or will they allow this to come before the committee, allow us to call witnesses, and get to the bottom of this? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, the PPSC works independently from government, as do committees, and we await the outcome of their deliberations. With respect to Vice Admiral Norman, the Public Prosecution Service of Canada has stayed the prosecution. No factors outside were taken in that decision-making. There was no external influence on the PPSC, including any sort of political influence, or in the decision to suspend or stay the prosecution. And any statement to the contrary is absurd. The Honourable Member for Mitcham-Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are the only one thinking there was no political interference. Now, Mr. Speaker, today the Federal Minister of Infrastructure was on Montreal's North Shore to make announcements on an infrastructure project in Quebec. But here's the problem, Mr. Speaker. No one was representing the government of Quebec. This is an infrastructure project in Quebec with no members of the Quebec government there, and yet this is a partnership. So my question to the Prime Minister is simple. Why was the government of Quebec not in an attendance at a federal provincial project attendance? The Honourable Minister of Family, Children and Skills Development. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I am so pleased to be able to speak about our infrastructure plan. Millions of dollars over 10 years, an historic plan that is changing not only the way our country is working and will work over the coming years, but a plan that invests in families, in the middle class, and that contributes to allowing the environment and the economy to go hand in hand and make a difference in regions like in Quebec. The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government is dealing with conflict on several files with Ontario, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, New Brunswick, Alberta, British Columbia, and Quebec. Over the weekend, this same minister, the Minister for Families and Liberal member from Quebec and from Louis-Hébert, publicly and directly attacked the government of Quebec. This attitude is disrespectful of the government of Quebec. So I repeat my question. Why is it that for a federal provincial project, the government of Quebec, no member of that government, was in attendance? The Honourable Minister of Families and Children. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, I am more than happy to speak about our government's investments in Quebec. We have worked with important stakeholders in Quebec City, a structural transportation program for the city of Quebec City that will reduce congestion, that will save time for families by reducing the amount of time they have to spend in their cars. It will reduce pollution. It will increase the quality of lives for families, and it will contribute to economic growth. And we're very proud of that.
For Burnaby South, order.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, across Canada, we're hearing a powerful sense of urgency around fighting climate change. And while Liberals and Conservatives use the issue to beat each other up, a closer look shows they actually have the same emission targets, the same love of pipelines, and both will exempt the biggest polluters from paying a price. New Democrats, though, are bringing people together with concrete action, ambitious targets, and making sure no worker or no community is left behind. Will Liberals join us in declaring a climate emergency?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, we're working very hard every day to reduce pollution, create good middle-class jobs, keep life affordable, and build a clean and prosperous future for our kids and grandkids. We have a serious plan that was built with Canadians to tackle climate change and to make the clean economy affordable for everyone, with over 50 measures. That includes investing in renewables to get 90% cleaner electricity, supporting 1,000 projects across the country when it comes to transportation, and also phasing out coal. Mr. Speaker, we'll work tirelessly to make sure that we reduce pollution. Thank you.
For Burnaby South.
Les gens paient les prix.
Mr. Speaker, people are paying the price of climate change. If we do not act now, the costs will be huge. But the Liberal policies are sending our country in the wrong direction. They bought a pipeline. They continue to subsidize the oil sector, and they're letting the big polluters get off scot-free. We have to make different choices to get better results. Will the Liberals have the courage to support our motion to declare a climate emergency? The Honourable Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, we are working very hard to decrease pollution, help the middle class, keep life affordable, and build a prosperous future for our children and grandchildren. We have a plan to tackle climate change and make a green economy more affordable with 50 steps, including increasing in renewable energy, getting 90% cleaner electricity, supporting more than 1,000 transit projects across the country, and phasing out coal. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work hard so that we can reduce pollution in Canada.
Be South.
Mr. Speaker, people from one ocean to another are paying the price for the Liberals' inaction in money laundering. This has led to an increase in the cost of housing, a loss in public funds, and an increase in organized crime. Rather than lead the way, the Liberals are refusing to act and are leaving it all up to British Columbia. The Liberals must strengthen our laws to make sure that those who are guilty are held accountable. Will they do that? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And we recognize the importance of having a fair real estate market. And that's why the agency has ramped up its verification and monitoring in British Columbia and Ontario. Since October 2015, these audits have led to several $1,000s being collected. Investments were made in 2019 to continue this and will allow the agency to increase its work by creating 4 new teams dedicated to real estate auditing. Allow me to be clear, Mr. Speaker. Fraudsters, tax fraudsters will not get away.
Mr. Speaker, across this country, Canadians are struggling to buy a home. But it turns out that money laundering has directly increased the cost of housing. In fact, last year alone, there was $47 billion money laundered in Canada. Now, Conservative inaction got us into this mess. Liberals have done little to fix it. Now, will Liberals now commit to creating a registry for real owners, making sure the money laundering unit actually does its work, and ensure that there's meaningful penalties imposed on criminals who break the law?
Good plan. Here. The Honourable Minister for Border Security.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to direct the member opposite to take a look at Budget 2019, where our government has made significant new investments in increasing law enforcement capacity and brought forward new regulatory changes in the Budget Implementation Act, which I urge them to support. These new regulations will provide for greater transparency and for federal organizations in determining beneficial ownership. They also have created a new offense of recklessness, which will facilitate both investigations and successful prosecutions. and as well as making significant investments in enhancing the capability of FinTrack and the RCMP to work collaboratively with our provincial and territorial partners.
Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Defence said he regrets the process Vice Admiral Norman had to go through, but he seems to have forgotten that it was the Prime Minister who hung the Vice Admiral out to dry in the first place. Now that Admiral Norman has been declared innocent, it's time for this corrupt Liberal government to explain why they obstructed justice, used code words to hide their actions, and refused to turn over evidence. Will the Prime Minister allow the National Defence Committee to examine the politically motivated attack against Vice Admiral Norman? Yes or no?
Parliament Secretary to the Minister of National Defence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as my colleague knows, the committee...
Order.
Order. Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Defence. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as my colleague knows, committees work independently from government, and we await the outcome of their deliberations. With respect to the legal process, Vice Admiral Norman and the PPSC did not take into account any external factors, and there was no outside influence on the PPSC, including political interference on the initial decision to lay the charges nor to stay the prosecution. Any statement to the contrary is absurd.
Interlake Eastman.
What's absurd, Mr. Speaker, is the Prime Minister's own actions. While the Prime Minister claims the process was free from interference, Vice Admiral Norman was vindicated in spite of the Liberals' attempt to obstruct justice and politically interfere in his case. The miscarriage of justice is yet another example of someone standing up to the Prime Minister and getting crushed for getting in his way. Will the Prime Minister apologize to Admiral Mark Norman? Show Canadians what they've been hiding and give Vice Admiral Norman his old job back.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, I'll repeat it. The PPSC has stated that no external factors were taken into account. There was no contact or influence from the outside, including any political interference in the initial decision to prosecute or to stay the prosecution. Once again, any statements to the contrary are absurd. And, Mr. Speaker, as we have said, General Vance will sit down and have a discussion with the Vice Admiral Norman at the appropriate time to discuss next stages. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, do the words Kraken, C-34, the boss remind you of anything? Well, those were code words used to secretly refer to Admiral Norman in order to avoid access to information requests. Furthermore, the Privy Council office has confirmed that at least 73 people were aware of the Liberal cabinet discussion over denying the Asterix contract to the Davie shipyard. Yet the Prime Minister only sent the name of Vice Admiral Norman to the RCMP for investigation. And no political interference? When will they admit that there was and apologize? The Honourable the Honourable Minister of Justice. Mr. Speaker, the investigation was led by the RCMP. We're very proud of this organization. The RCMP handed their investigation over the PPSC, another very respectful institution that we are proud of. This is a prosecution that was decided on by the Director of Public Prosecutions, and the decision to stay the proceedings was their decision and their decision alone. There was no interference. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister didn't have something against Vice Admiral Norman, and if he really wanted to find out the truth, he would have submitted all those names to the RCMP, and he would have prevented not have prevented the handing over of all the documents. He ruined the reputation of the Vice Admiral Norman. Will the Prime Minister allow the committee to shed light on this matter, or will he once again engage in political... The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, thank you very much. I'll repeat it again, Mr. Speaker. The committee works independently of the government. We await the outcome of their discussions. Once again, in terms of the judicial process, the PPSC stayed the proceedings and said that there were no other factors taken into account in that decision, and there was no contact or interference from the outside, including political interference, in the decision to have the prosecution or state the prosecution. Any statements to the contrary are absolutely absurd on the part of the official opposition.
Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
But, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Public Services and Procurement says the government can't be apologizing for the public prosecution doing its job in the Admiral Norman case. But let's be clear, the public prosecution protected the rule of law and requires no apology. It's this Prime Minister and the Liberals who politically interfered to tip the scales of justice and punish Admiral Norman. When will the Prime Minister admit to Canadians what he did was wrong and apologize to Vice Admiral?
Honourable Minister of Public Services.
The process... Sorry, let me be very clear. The process that unfolded did so with complete independence of our government. The investigation, the decision to delay in state proceedings, and in fact the prosecution itself was handled by the Public Prosecution Service of Canada. Canadians can be very confident in the independence of our judicial system, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Canadians are confident in the Director of Public Prosecutions, but the Minister of Public Service and Procurement stated that the Prime Minister saying Admiral Norman would be in court before he was even charged was not the best framing of words. It was also not the best framing when the Prime Minister refused to provide court-ordered documents and tampered with witnesses, or when the Minister of National Defence refused to pay Norman's legal fees, stating he was guilty. Clearly, the only one being framed was Admiral Norman. When will the Prime Minister apologize for what his government has done to Mark Norman?
Honourable Minister of Justice. Order.
Mr. Speaker, there were requests from the court, and we provided the court with over 8,000 documents from 7 different government agencies, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the court complimented us on our cooperation in this matter. Mr. Speaker, the decision to redact those documents was not made by the government, but by an apolitical agency. Mr. Speaker, Canadians can be assured that our judicial system, our prosecution system, operates completely independent of government, and we can be proud of it.
Member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve a transparent and open legal system. The Norman case has been anything but. We know that the Prime Minister's office, the Department of Defence, and the Privy Council office withheld important documents in this case. How is it that Gerald Butts gets his old texts and emails within days of quitting, but Vice Admiral Norman has waited a year and a half? Liberals have interfered with yet another judicial process. If they value the rule of law, why are Liberals blocking Canadians' access to this information?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, all the various premises of that question are categorically false. The Department of Justice cooperated, Mr. Speaker, with the court in order to provide the requested documents. The documents that were requested were given over, Mr. Speaker, over 8,000 of them from 7 different agencies. Of course that takes time, Mr. Speaker. And the redaction, Mr. Speaker, was done independently from political bodies. Mr. Speaker, the court itself cited the government and its cooperation in this matter.
Yeah. Very good.
Member for Essex.
The denial story isn't working. The Liberal government doesn't get to decide to uphold the rule of law when it only benefits them. Yeah. This Prime Minister promised he would do things differently, but his office has been involved now in 2 different cases of potentially interfering in our independent justice system. Mark Norman's lawyer clearly said the PMO was, quote, counseling witnesses as to what they could and could not say. Our independent justice system does not belong to the Liberals. Yeah. When will they get out of the way and allow Canadians to know what happened?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, it's a curious question with an accusation which is baseless. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in this particular case, the PPSC was acting independently of the federal government because the supervisory role in this case under the Criminal Code was actually held by the Attorney General for Ontario, Mr. Speaker. The Director of Public Prosecutions has said, and the prosecutor in question has said, that there was no contact or government interference in this case.
Leader Megan Tickler.
The Honourable Member from Mégantic-Clairette. Mr. Speaker, after 2 months of inaction on the canola file, the Prime Minister has just realized that this is a political crisis. His response? Rather surprising. He's going to continue to do nothing and just wait. No complaint filed with the WTO, no new ambassador, nothing, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Agriculture has just returned from Japan, where all the agricultural ministers of the G20 were in attendance. Did she stand up and demand a firm date for a technical delegation to go to China, yes or no?
Minister of International Trade.
I'm sorry that the honourable member hasn't been paying closer attention to the file. If he would have been paying closer attention to the file, he would know that there has been a continuous engagement and that we seek to be invited to China to talk to the scientists about the accusation that there is impurity in canola. Secondly, has he been paying attention to the generous support for producers that has been called a very important...
I'll ask the Honourable Minister to just finish up for the last 10 seconds or so, and then we're going to go to the next question. There's too much noise in the House. The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, the member is not paying attention to what the Premier of Saskatchewan has said, nor is he paying attention to the expansion of export markets, nor is he paying attention to the very interesting meeting that the Minister of Agriculture has had in Japan with their counterparts, and we'll know more about that in a matter of days.
Honourable Member for Red Deer, Mountain View. Order.
But, Mr. Speaker, a loan guarantee is no substitute for weak trade policy. Right. The Conservative leader has outlined 3 concrete steps to stand up for our canola farmers. Appoint an ambassador to China, launch a WTO trade complaint against China, and to pull funds from the Chinese-run Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Instead of taking our advice, the Prime Minister sent the Agriculture Minister to the G20, where she couldn't even be bothered to raise this issue once with the Chinese. Will the Liberals ever stand up to China and take action?
Honourable Minister of International Trade Diversification. Order.
He's signing trade agreements. That means 1.5 billion customers in Canada's free trade zone, the only G7 nation to have a free trade agreement with the other 6. That sounds like a strong trade policy to me. How about an increase of 17% in Canadian exports to Japan after ratification of the CPTPP? I would call that a strong trade policy. What's weak is this Conservative opposition's understanding of what strength means in trade policy.
Honourable Member for Niagara West.
Mr. Speaker, our relations with China is at an all-time low, and all the Prime Minister is willing to do is to blame the Americans. Canada has banned Canadian pork, Canadian canola, and detained 2 Canadians. While China is bullying Canada, the Prime Minister is giving over $250 million to China's Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Will the Prime Minister quit blaming others for his failures, pull all the funding to the Asian Infrastructure Bank, file a trade challenge with the WTO, and immediately appoint a new ambassador?
Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Finance. Order.
Mr. Speaker, once again, the Conservatives continue the Harper era of turning their backs on the world. But they shouldn't be cheering, Mr. Speaker, because of those types of policies that the Conservatives had. They had some of the lowest growth since the Great Depression. We on this side, with Canadians, have created over 1 million jobs. And that's because we know a strong global economy is good for Canada and good for Canadians.
Honourable Member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Liberals dispatched one of their MPs to China. Now, not to demand the release of Canadian citizens and not to fight for our exporters, but to go there to suggest partnerships in our Arctic with China, Mr. Speaker. Days after the United States questioned our sovereignty and raised risks about Russia and China in the Arctic, the Liberal government rushes to partner with China, Mr. Speaker. When will this Liberal government start getting serious with China?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Order.
Mr. Speaker, let me start by addressing the question of the Northwest Passage to which the Honourable Member has alluded. I think it is important to state very clearly in this House and for all Canadians who are listening, Canada's absolute claim to the Northwest Passage. This is a claim based on geography. It is a claim based on history. It is a claim based on who we are as Canadians. And we are very clear on that, as I was was in my meeting with Secretary Pompeo in Finland last week. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, when you ask most people to pay their taxes but give tax holidays to billionaires, it's clear that there is a problem. Canada is the only country in the G7 that applies a sales tax, as if the internet didn't exist. The multinational web giant should respect the same rules as businesses here. Will the government finally support the NDP bill so that our tax laws respond to the digital economy?
Government is committed to ensuring that Canada's tax system is fair and creates a strong middle class. But the issue of how to appropriately tax web giants is not uniquely Canadian. In fact, it's a global issue. That's precisely why Canada is working with our international partners, including the OECD, to come up with a consensus-based approach. One that ensures every company pays their fair share while also fostering a country and a space of innovation and digital technology.
For New Westminster, Burnaby.
Well, the fact is, the Liberals are protecting the web giants from paying taxes, and that's irresponsible. Now, a BC report estimates that money laundering in Canada under the Liberals now reaches close to $50 billion annually. Money laundering is not a victimless crime, and it has caused a major increase in home prices in the Lower Mainland and elsewhere. Now, this Liberal government refuses to crack down on rampant money laundering. They failed to allocate staffing and resources. They refuse the necessary tools. Why is the government refusing to take these actions, and who are they protecting now?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue.
This government knows how important it is for all Canadians to have access to housing. Now, in British Columbia and in Ontario, since 2015, there have been audits and investments millions of dollars in the 2018-2019 budget in order to support the housing market. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Erin Mills.
Mr. Speaker, in June, Vancouver will host Women Deliver, the world's largest conference on gender equality and the health, rights, and well-being of women and girls around the world. Women Deliver bring together people from over 160 countries with a common goal: to activate and mobilize communities across the globe to push the needle towards progress. Can the Minister of International Development and the Minister of Women and Gender Equality tell this House how Canadians can join this movement, promote gender equality, and change the narrative worldwide?
Honourable Minister of Women and Gender Equality.
Mr. Speaker, in Canada and around the world, women are rising. Global women's marches, Me Too, and other movements like it remind us of the progress made, the work remaining, and the need to push back against the pushback. This June in Vancouver, we will be hosting Women Deliver, an opportunity to raise awareness and build momentum to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Our government believes that advancing gender equality is the right thing to do. It's also about tapping into the $150 billion economy in Canada, the $12 trillion economy around the world. Our approach is working, Mr. Speaker. 1 million jobs have been created in Canada since we got elected.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent.
Here can participate in this very important issue, Mr. Speaker. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said something really spectacular in December 2015, and I quote, "The promise of a balanced budget in 2019, that is set in stone." Well, it's exactly the opposite. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's word is worth nothing when it comes to public finances. Do the Liberals realize that during a period of economic prosperity, due in large part to the U.S., that it's a time to pay down your debts, not add to them? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I'm thrilled to answer this question from my honourable colleague, because let's talk about our record. 1 million new jobs created by Canadians. The best growth we've seen in decades. Unemployment rates, lifting 300,000 children out of poverty, giving more benefits to Canadian seniors. Mr. Speaker, I'm not not surprised it's taken them this long to ask a question about the budget, because when you look at the Conservatives' records, they're failures. This Prime Minister, this Minister of Finance have delivered for Canadians, and that's precisely what we're going to continue.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Well, under the Conservative government, created 1 million jobs and with a balanced budget. Now, the Liberal Party got elected committing to 3 small deficits and 0 deficit in 2019. Do the Liberals know that they can't just go across Canada saying to Canadians, this is how we've managed our finances? There's been no accountability for what they said in 2015. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I'm always astonished to see that my colleague, that he could talk about a balanced budget without laughing when they added all their billions to the debt. We have the greatest growth since the Second World War, the highest job growth. It was a decade of failure under the Conservatives, but what we're doing is truly positive for the economy. 1 million jobs, Mr. Speaker. All these children lifted out of poverty. That's our record.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
The difference is this. We created 1 million jobs when the world was in economic crisis, Mr. Speaker. We did it while raising middle-class incomes more than any government before or since. We did so by increasing the amount people had in their pockets and making it possible to pay their bills. Right now, there are half of Canadians that are $200 away from insolvency while their government drowns in debt. Isn't that really the Liberal agenda? More debt, lower incomes, and a declining economy.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite just described the failed Conservative plan. More debt, lower wages for Canadians, less growth in the economy. They didn't lift more people, or they didn't increase unemployment rates. Mr. Speaker, we cannot take any lessons from the Conservatives. They just simply can't stand it. Their plan doesn't work, and now they don't know what to do. But on this side of the House, our plan is working. We've invested in the middle class, and as a result, we've created over 1 million new jobs.
This back and forth is interesting, but it is taking some time. These presentations and standing ovations and such, it's cutting into our time. Ask honourable members to use their discretion in that regard. The honourable member for Carleton.
The cold, hard facts delivered from Stats Canada demonstrate the best middle-class income growth of any government before or since happened under the Conservatives. 1 million net new jobs, the lowest debt and deficit in the G7, the highest economic growth in the G7, the last in and first out of the great global recession. That's what we did in the hard global times. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, what we can do with when times are good. We will eliminate their deficit, lower the taxes, and leave more money in the pockets of people who learned it. When will they learn that their theory of trickle-down government doesn't work?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. Order.
Mr. Speaker, I don't have the stomach to imagine what the Conservatives would continue to do with our economy after the disastrous 10 years they did. I'm glad that they also recognize now the importance.
No, it's It's now too noisy for, I'm sure there are other honourable members that wish to hear what the Parliamentary Secretary is saying. The same thing can happen when we have responses from the other side. I'd ask all honourable members to keep the noise down. I'll ask the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to wrap up 15 seconds. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, at the end of the day, the Conservatives will continue like the Ford government plan, which is cuts to Canadian families that need it and increased spending for millionaires. We're focused on Canadians, and as a result, we have one of the best economies in the G7, and we're going to keep working for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagot. Mr. Speaker, William Morissette from New Brunswick has a cancer that prevents him from working. He has used up his 15 weeks of sick leave and doesn't have access to disability benefits. Besides having to fight cancer, William, although he's surrounded by 32 Liberal members in the Atlantic, has to fight this Liberal government. William, like millions, or rather like thousands of people, believe the Prime Minister and his minister when they promised to fix these unjust benefit system. When will they finally honour the promise towards William and others like him? The Honourable Minister for Families. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for raising this issue, which is at the very heart of the mandate we have to work for families and to help people who are struggling to join the middle class, to help people who have lost their jobs because of terrible health issues. We want and we put in place substantive improvements to our EI system and the healthcare system. We're going to add 2 more benefits to make sure that these people get the help they need.
The changes to the asylum system the Prime Minister tried to sneak through in the omnibus budget bill show his true colors. Despite Liberal promises, there was no gender-based analysis done. When experts at the Immigration Committee pointed this out, government members had no answers. The changes will disproportionately impact women and girls fleeing violence by denying their right to seek protection in Canada. 46 women organizations from across Canada sent an open letter to the Prime Minister condemning these changes. Will the Prime Minister do what is right and withdraw these provisions, or is he just content that his version of feminism is just for show?
Honourable Minister for Border Security.
Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear. Canada remains absolutely committed to a fair and compassionate refugee protection system, and everyone who comes to this country will be afforded a hearing. So we've been equally clear that any individual who is determined to be in need of protection will receive Canada's protection.
Honourable Member for Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, a majority of Canadians are really worried about the rising prices of gas. In my riding, in my province, they are looking at tight budgets already and deciding what essentials need to be cut. The Liberals handing out millions of dollars to their billionaire friends at Loblaws is doing nothing for affordability. Meanwhile, we have the Prime Minister and the Environment Minister jet-setting around the world with abandon. When will they finally admit their carbon tax is hurting those that are the most vulnerable?
Parliament Secretary and Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, I'd point out to the honourable member that a majority of Canadians are similarly opposed to provincial governments wasting taxpayers' dollars to fight climate action instead of climate change. Mr. Speaker, the fact is we're moving forward with a plan that's going to reduce our emissions. Our climate is facing a crisis, but we can actually do something about it if we pull together. The Conservatives have not asked me a single question about what we can do to protect our environment, despite having been in this chamber for months. They would reverse course. We are bringing emissions down, and we're doing it in a way that is helping grow the economy. We've added over 1 million jobs to the economy with the help of Canadians, put more money in the pockets of middle-class families, and done the right by our environment as well.
Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals don't have an environmental plan, they have a tax plan. And since they've put the carbon tax in place, the price of gas has gone up, the price of home heating has gone up, and Canadians are paying more for food as businesses raise their prices to cover the cost of the carbon tax. So why are the Liberals continuing to raise taxes on families and seniors who can least afford it?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Speaker, the honourable member knows that our plan to put a price on pollution is going to put more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 families in the province of Ontario. I'm curious whether the honourable member is actually going to be claiming her climate action instead of this tax year. Mr. Speaker, the fact is the Conservatives have not been concerned about affordability until it became politically convenient. When we put more money in the pockets of 9 out of 10 Canadian families by improving the Canada Child Benefit, they voted against it. When we cut taxes for 9 million middle-class Canadians and raised it on the wealthiest 1%, they voted against it. When we beefed up the guaranteed income supplement for low-income single seniors to make life more affordable for the most vulnerable Canadians, they voted against it.
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Well, here's how their plan is working, Mr. Speaker. The number of Canadians who are $200 or less away from not being able to pay their bills every month has climbed to 48%, while 26% can't even cover their bills. So what does the Prime Minister do? He imposes a carbon tax on the necessities of life, driving up the cost of everything on seniors and families who can't afford it. Gas prices are skyrocketing. Groceries are going up with this new carbon tax. Why doesn't the Prime Minister just admit that his plan is not an environmental plan, it's a tax plan that will do nothing to reduce emissions?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, in the first month that our plan to put a price on pollution took effect, the honourable member's province added 45,000 jobs to the provincial economy. I'm curious, Mr. Speaker, if he's claiming this is going to be gloom and doom, why it's working so well. Mr. Speaker, the fact is, we've had a plan that's going to reduce emissions from day one. We have had a plan that's going to grow the economy from day one, and most importantly, we're going to have a plan that will make life more affordable for Canadians from day one. If the honourable member doesn't want to take my word for it, I'd point him gladly to the Parliamentary Budget Office report, who confirms this to be a fact.
Member for South Surrey, White Rock.
Well, thank you, kind speaker. The United Nations recently released its report on biodiversity. The headlines read, "Nature's dangerous decline unprecedented. 1 million species face extinction, and we must fix nature to avoid human misery." Innumerable scientific studies have documented the human cost of climate change, yet many people and parties, even in this House, remain stuck in denial with no plan to save nature and thus humanity. Would the Parliamentary Secretary please give us specifics with respect to the action that is being taken by our government to protect nature and thus humankind?
Parliament Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, the UN report to which the honourable member refers paints a very stark picture of the challenge facing nature today. The fact is, since the 1970s, we know that the world has lost 60% of its wildlife. We also know that Canada is one of 5 countries that represents 3/4 of the world's remaining wilderness. Mr. Speaker, there is time to do something about it if we pull together. Our government has made the single largest investment in protecting nature in the history of our country and has committed to doubling protected spaces. Mr. Speaker, this is a statistic that should shock the conscience of all Canadians, but it's something we have time to turn around if we all just pull together for once.
Member for Banff Airdrie.
A tax system that is fair, efficient, and modern. That's one of 7 requests of over 200,000 Canadian businesses who just want the government to stop throwing up barriers and allow them to thrive and succeed. Instead, what the Liberals have given Canadian businesses is tax increases like a job-killing carbon tax, higher payroll taxes, and complicated red tape that will hurt many small businesses. Will the Liberals accept the recommendations of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, or are they just going to keep calling Canadian small business owners tax cheats?
Honourable Minister for Small Business and Export Promotion.
Mr. Speaker, our government works hard for our small businesses. We've cut over 400 regulatory irritants for small businesses. We have cut more red tape in the last 3.5 years than you did in the last 10 years. That is working hard for small businesses in this country.
Honourable Member for Esquimalt, Saanich, Sooke.
Mr. Speaker, the southern resident killer whales are under immediate threat of extinction, yet the Liberal government's recovery plan lacks urgency and fails to take on the major threat to these orcas, oil tankers and freighters. While the government has banned local small craft from the Swiftsure Bank, the most critical piece of habitat for the orcas, it will continue to allow more than 13,000 freighters and oil tankers to transit the bank each year. That makes no sense. In order to protect these endangered orcas, will the government act immediately to realign the commercial shipping lanes and move the major noise and pollution threats away from the Swiftsure Bank?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
We are
are taking unprecedented steps with respect to transportation, with respect to ships passing through not only the Strait of Juan de Fuca, where they displace themselves, but also where they slow down when they're going through Boundary Pass and the Harrow Strait. We have also put in place minimum distances from southern resident killer whales that are unprecedented, that make us leaders in the world. We take this issue extremely seriously, and we're very proud of what we have done.
Member for Newmarket, Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, small businesses in both Newmarket and Aurora have told me how important it is for them to export to new markets. Reaching global markets not only helps their businesses find new clients, it also means better paying jobs right here at home. How is the Minister of Small Business and Export Promotion helping our best and most promising small businesses prepare to export to these new markets?
Good question. Minister of Small Business and Export Promotion.
I want to thank the honourable member from Newmarket and Aurora for that great question. And he's right. He's right. When small businesses export, they are more productive, they create more jobs, they grow and they scale at higher rates. Recently, I announced an investment of $6.7 million to help 1,000 Canadian SMEs grow their businesses. This includes SMEs in the northern communities in Ontario as well, so that they can successfully put a plan together and successfully export. Canada's trade agreements gives our businesses access to 1.5 billion customers in the global marketplace. Mr. Speaker, our government is going to work hard for small businesses today and every day.
Honourable member for Abbotsford. Loblaws is one of the richest companies in Canada. Canadians were outraged when they found out that these Liberals gave the company $12 million to buy new fridges, even though Loblaws didn't need or deserve that money. This is the same company that ripped off Canadians by rigging bread prices for over a decade. Is this the Liberals' idea of a climate change plan? Which other well-connected companies are getting handouts from the government's low-carbon economy fund?
Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, the Low Carbon Economy Fund had an open application process, and we tasked officials to identify the most effective projects that we could fund in terms of dollars spent to have emissions come down, Mr. Speaker. This was one of 54 projects. But, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to point out that this is just one of over 50 measures we've implemented. We're putting a price on pollution that is making life more affordable. We're investing in public transit. And, yes, we're investing in energy efficiency. The fact is, we're able to do this at the same time that the Canadian economy has added over 1 million jobs. The Conservatives have no plan for the environment and no plan for the economy. They're seem content on just turning back the clock to the days of Stephen Harper.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. They haven't budgeted 1 cent to compensate producers, supply-managed producers before the election. The Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed this. The Liberals committed $3.9 billion, but now this commitment has been transformed into an election promise. Producers have said, we want concrete action before the election. That includes a check. When are they going to get their checks?
The member knows that the Minister and the Department have been in a constant conversation with the producers, that the commitment was made a very long time ago, and the commitment will be delivered, that there will be full and fair compensation to an industry that is so important to the Canadian economy.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. I think it's time to stop talking and get the checks out. We're asking the Minister not to reassure farmers, but to compensate them. The PBO said as much, that he would be worried as well. Producers are told, vote Liberal and you'll get your money. Instead of blackmailing farmers before the election, will the government send them a check before the end of the session?
International trade diversification.
The member knows that throughout our conversations internationally, we have steadfastly supported the supply management system in Canada. We believe how important it is not only for those regions where it has been important for a long time, but for the Canadian agricultural economy. The promise was made that there would be full and fair compensation, and that is a promise that will be delivered.
The honourable member for Calgary Skyview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is great to have foreign students come to Canada to learn from our world-class education institutions. It's good for the world and it's good for Canada. While these students are learning in schools, they are also working and contributing to our economy. I did an article today about a student named Jobandeep Sandhu. Mr. Sandhu is facing deportation for working too much. This is sad, Mr. Speaker, and this is not right. Will the Minister of Immigration consider raising the amount of hours that an international student can legally work in Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration and Refugees.
Mr. Speaker, our government knows that students, international students, contribute a great deal to our economy, our culture, and our society. $50 billion in spin-offs for the Canadian economy, Mr. Speaker.
Canada, we've made changes to the postgraduate work permit to allow them to work and stay in Canada and immigrate permanently to our country, those who wish to do so. It is important for all the applicants to live up to the requirements of the immigration system in the stream. We are contributing and attracting the best and the brightest from around the world to contribute to our economic growth, Mr. Speaker.
Good job. That will conclude oral questions for today. Tabling of documents. Dépôt de documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
So thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 36, Bracket 8, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's response to one petition.
Oh, yeah. Tabling of documents. Introduction of government bills. Dépôt de projet de loi émanant du gouvernement. Statements by ministers. Déclaration des ministres. Reports from interparliamentary delegations. Présentation de rapport de comité.
Presenting reports from committees.
Introduction of private members' bills. Mr. Albus, seconded by Mr. Clark, moves for leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Criminal Code, Aggravating Circumstance, Evacuation Order, or Emergency. This motion is deemed adopted. The Honourable Member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise on behalf of the good people of Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.